In this lesson, we will learn about configuring zone transfer. First of all, we will create a primary standard file zone active-liveskills.com on GPVDC01, then change this to Active Directory Integrated Zone. After that, we will configure zone transfer for active-liveskills.com on GPVDC01. Next, we will create a secondary standard file zone active-liveskills.com on RPVDC01. Then we will troubleshoot any related issue for zone transfer. Finally, we will sum up the lesson with the keynotes. Let's create the primary zone for the domain active-liveskills.com as a standard file zone on the DNS server GPVDC01. As you can see, this folder is where all the zone files are created, and currently there's no zone file for the domain active-liveskills.com. Let's create it. To do that, we need to minimize this windows and then right click on the forward lookup zones, then click on the new zones. Then we click next, and to create the primary zone, we need to select the primary zone option, and to make it a standard file zone, we need to uncheck the option store the zone in Active Directory, then click next. Here we type in the zone name, which is the domain name active-liveskills.com, then click next. And here we accept the default file name, which is active-liveskills.com.dns, then click next. And here we select the option do not allow dynamic updates, then click next and click finish. Now let's expand the forward lookup zones. As you can see, the zone for active-liveskills.com domain has been created. Now let's open the folder. As you can see, the zone file for the active-liveskills.com has been created. Everything looks good. Now let's change the type of the zone for the domain active-liveskills.com to Active Directory Integrated. To do that, we need to right-click on the zone and click on Properties. Here we can see the current type is primary and there is no replication scope. Let's change this by clicking on the Change button. To change this to the Active Directory Integrated, we just need to select the option Store the zone in Active Directory, then click OK. And we just click Yes to accept. And now the type of the zone is Active Directory Integrated. And we can see the replication scope. Let's click on the Change button to see all the scopes that we can change. The first scope is to replicate to all DNS servers running on domain controllers in this forest. The second scope is to replicate to all DNS servers running on domain controllers in this domain. And the last option is to all domain controllers in this domain. So let's keep the current scope and click OK. And click OK. That's it. From now on, all the DNS records for the zone of the domain active-liveskills.com will be stored in Active Directory. For any types of primary zone, we can configure zone transfers to send a copy of the zone to the servers that request a copy. Let's configure the zone transfer for active-liveskills.com domain to allow the zone transfer to only the DNS server RPVDC01. To do that, we need to right-click on the zone and click on Properties, then click on the Zone Transfers tab. Here we see the option to allow the zone transfer. We first need to select the option allow zone transfers, and we can configure it to transfer to any server or only to servers listed in the name server tab, or to only the following servers. To configure it to only transfers to our PVDC01, let's click on this option, and here is the IP of our PVDC01. Let's copy it and hit enter to copy, and minimize this and click edit, and then here we paste the IP and we click on OK and click OK. That's it. We have just configured to allow the zone transfer from the DNS server GPVDC01 to our PVDC01. Let's create the secondary zone for the domain itlifeskills.com on the DNS server or PVDC01, then get the zone transfer from the master server GPVDC01. To do that, we need to right-click on the for lookup zones, then click on New Zone and click Next. Then we select the secondary zone option. As you can see, as soon as we click on the secondary zone, the option to store the zone in Active Directory is grayed down because the secondary zone can only be created as the standard zone file. Let's click Next. Here we need to put in the zone name. In this case is itlifeskills.com. Then click Next. Here we need to put in the IP address of the master server. In this case, it is a GPVDC01. So we just need to copy the IP address, then minimize this, then paste it here, then click Next and click Finish. Now let's click on the domain itlifeskills.com, and we get the error message zone not loaded by DNS server. Let's manually transfer the zone from the master, and we got the error message zone transfer was not executed, refused. So let's click OK and open the event log. Here we open the computer management and click on the event viewer and click on the application and services, then right click on the DNS server and click the option refresh, and we see the error message, and the detail is the zone transfer request for the secondary zone. itlifeskills.com was refused by the master DNS server 10.0.0.10. That is the error message. To troubleshoot the issue, we need to open the DNS server log on the master server GPVDC01. Let's open it. Here is the DNS server log on GPVDC01, and we see the information message that the DNS server successfully completed transfer of version 2 of zone itlifeskills.com to the DNS server at 10.0.0.2, which is the default gateway. So let's copy the IP address. Now we need to configure GPVDC01 to allow zone transfer to the default gateway 10.0.0.2. To do that, we need to right click on the domain itlifeskills.com, then click on properties, then click on zone transfer, and here we click edit and paste the IP address of the default gateway 10.0.0.2, then click OK, then click OK. That's it. Now let's get back to the DNS server OPVDC01, and we just need to right click on the zone itlifeskills.com, then click on refresh, and we see that OPVDC01 get all the zone information for the domain itlifeskills.com. Everything looks good. This is the end of this lesson. Let's read the keynotes.